Namaste. So, regarding the question of to intervene or not to intervene or when to intervene. So, in general, from the yoga point of view, the mother has what her instructions have been in general, without turning it into any kind of dogma, is that you should intervene only when somebody is responsible, you are responsible for someone, or someone has given you that right to intervene. Otherwise, in general, it's not good to intervene. So, teachers, yes, teachers have a right to explain, it's part of their work. And again, as parents, we have a right to explain to a child. But other than that, in general, or as sometimes as a citizen, you have a certain. Otherwise, in general, it's neither good to intervene nor interfere with things which do not concern us. So, one classic example was where somebody saw a sadhak in a not a very happy position with someone else, and the person because the door was open and the person complained to the mother, and the mother scolded this sadhak who complained. She said, you have seen it, now you forget about it. That's it. Because evolution is a very complex process. It's not at all as simple as, because each child has a past which he's bringing, and he cannot rise to that level where we are. That's why some of the fundamental principles of education, from the near to the far. Okay, so that's to be respected. Then from what the person is to where you want to. So there is a big gap. If you suddenly tell children or anybody that you should be like this, that is of course the worst way to explain to a child. But you have to lead the child through his own reasoning. So, for example, now coming straight to a question where you think that a child is hitting each other, isn't it? So, how will you start? The start should be, why are you doing this? Make the child conscious. So, I am doing it just for fun or something. So, what kind of fun you derive in this? And then you lead by that. Do you understand that if you hit somebody, it may hit the eye or something else, it may hurt, harm? So, step by step, through a process of question and answer, the child has to be made conscious. That's all that is given to us. And that is the art of the teacher or the educator, let me put it like that, to ultimately make the child become aware of something by himself, like an insight, rather than do this and don't do this, because it doesn't work and operate. As to children, when this was asked to mother, that children sometimes display wicked impulses. So it's not wickedness, he explained. Like, they hit a dog and also, they sometimes do that. Many of them is learned behavior because they have seen it in their parents or someone. It's a very unfortunate thing. They have just received as a contagion. Second is, don't realize the consequences of what they are doing. They don't understand that it can really hurt, it can really harm. So it's part of the training to make them become aware. And third, children most of the time live in the vital. They don't live in the mind. So it's only after 10, 9, 10, some elementary, rudimentary reasoning is there, but the reason begins to take over only when they are touching adolescence. That's when the reason begins to develop. So before that, you have to use some practical measures. Sometimes these practical measures for one's own children can be, or as a teacher to student, that certain behavior should be, a line should be drawn. You have to draw limits. And if the child is overstepping those limits, you have to, no punishment like that, but okay, for some time you will be by yourself. So in schools, classrooms, it is recommended to have a room of silence, not as a punishment, but where the child goes and sits for some time. And he naturally reflects. You don't have to say reflect upon a certain behavior. And then the child comes back and integrates. No further discussion beyond that. Then through appeal to the child's deeper parts. Every child has a deeper parts. Even if, leave aside the psychic, even in vital, there are deeper movements. And if you appeal to the child that, don't you think this is going to hurt? What the repercussion will be. So the children tend to understand, but still they may repeat the behavior out of simple habit of nature. So again you have to explain with a lot of patience. So it's not a one-time package. As to violence, we can understand violence in two ways. One is the origin of anger, which leads to violence, is a sign of vital weakness. Because the vital is weak. So if you don't correct that and you just say that, you should not be aggressive, actually the right word would be aggressive, it doesn't work. People with a lot of aggression have a very weak vital nature. And they're very sentimental also, like committing suicide and the threats. It's very weak vital. So, unless you strengthen the vital, they'll make a mess of their life in any case because of this undue aggression. So, vital has to be made strong. That's why in the ashram context, a lot of stress on physical education. Okay? But violence in the sense that physical aggression, should it be, no under all circumstances? No, not at all. So even Buddha, who is the real apostle of ahimsa, it has nothing to do with Gandhi. Gandhi and ahimsa is not ahimsa. It is a physical abstinence, which is a very dangerous thing because you are boiling inside, but outwardly you are abstaining, particularly because you are doing it out of a sense of superior moral righteousness. That look here, I am like that. This is the most dangerous kind of thing. Also, it sets in motion forces which are very dangerous for the world. Moral violence is much worse. You are inwardly releasing forces of anger, hatred, but outwardly you are holding yourself. So it is not healthy for you or for anybody else. But even Buddha, who is a true apostle of non-violence, spoke about the justified self-defense. Sri Aurobindo gave a very simple, very direct example, that what will Gandhi do if Hitler marches into India? As simple as that. He comes to your house and you say, no, I am supposed to be practicing non-violence. You have to stop the aggressor. And he goes on to say, sometimes it's better to stop the aggressor. It's good for even the aggressor. Because if you allow him to go unbridled, you are creating a full-blown asura. That's why there is a limit beyond which you have to, but don't initiate that. It's not a way of life. Second is that, by and large, of course, compassion is definitely a greater quality. But when you think that an aggressor is overstepping his limits, now that is for each one to understand. Certainly you must very firmly oppose it. It's good for the world play, good for the person, and of course good for you. It's not good to remain weak-natured. And for Kshatriya type, it is a swadharma. So if you are a born Kshatriya by nature, by tendency, by God's plan in your evolutionary journey, you must learn to stop it. Otherwise, a lot of harm is done in this world because we want to remain Mr. Clean and look very nice, whereas the forces just go on trampling. So there are many aspects of a single issue. So what if the child is Kshatriya by nature? So you have to guide very differently from a child who is more Brahminical by nature, turned towards knowledge. So you have to study a child. It's not like a on-spot decision. On-spot decisions are to be taken sometime when there is an exigency of time. The child may be in danger or endangering somebody else. If a child has a gun in the hand and says, I'll shoot you, obviously you have to stop. Or a knife in the hand and say, okay, we are going to do a dagger fight. Yes, you have to stop because it's dangerous. The child may hurt somebody. But in general, in fact, you can turn this physical, when they are fighting with each other, into teach them that if you really want to do it, let's learn how to do it. So that's what wrestling is about. Here, you'll see a picture of the mother. Wrestling is an art. And fighting is not an art, it's a wild thing. So that is the difference. So you have, now when you wrestle, you are channelizing that force. Because wrestling is an art. You can't just, pick up and start doing a street fight. That's the difference. Boxing is an art because there are rules. You can't, so there are children who have that impulse in them. And the right way is to teach them and train them. I would rather, if I observe that a child has this tendency of excessive physical aggression, I would rather enlist the child into one of these training places where they can learn either boxing or wrestling as an art. And it will help them. Or if nothing else, at least taekwondo or martial arts, so that they learn to channelize rather than don't do it, because then it may be contrary to the child's nature. Okay, so that you are disciplining that vital. And disciplining the vital is always a very long process. Most importantly, we ourselves have aggression inside us. Children catch that vibration very fast. So if you tell a child, don't do it, and you're seething with anger, then child is getting a double message. Also, sometimes you can oppose that aggression with peace inside. Mother says if you observe a disorder, you should be able to set it right, which is a tall order for most human beings. Then sometimes this aggression is because they are experiencing some kind of trauma which they don't speak about. So it's also important to talk to a child, what they are experiencing. Supposing a child is watching either movies of a certain kind. Also, why is he watching movies of that kind? You have to go deep into it. With parents, what is the relation? Supposing parents are hitting a child. So you have to talk to a child that why are you being so? The child will come out. If there is the feeling of trust, he may say, well, my parents fight at home with hands and feet, not only with words. So you have to talk to the parents because the problem is there and child comes later. So that's why sometimes the answer, it's difficult to say yes or no in simple terms. And as I said, most important is the inner poise. If in any activity we begin to lose our inner poise, then we should just step back. Let it pass. Because our own inner poise is the first business of a sadhak. To stay in that poise of calm, peace, equanimity. And if that is getting lost because of whatever reason, it may get lost momentarily, but suddenly become conscious and step back that maybe I am going this far, which is no more good to me. So, first step is our own development, because unless we have that, then nothing else really works. Okay, so this is in a nutshell, how to deal with aggression in children. Okay, Namaste.